Erev Tov to everybody. We want to thank Dr. Yitzhak and Yehudit Farnberg for sponsoring this the Dvar Torah for Parshat Vayakhel, Parshat Para, and it's in the memory of Dr. Yitzhak's mother, and may she have an aliyah of the neshama. Her name is Bracha Bat Yitzhak, and Dr. Yitzhak is asking or blessing that also freedom of our incarcerated fellow Jews, that this should be also for them. Everybody knows about the well-known the question, why does the Torah repeat 4 times the whole inyan of the Mishkan? One in Parshat Truma and Tetzaveh. Then comes in the middle Parshat Ki Tisa, which speaks about the debacle of the Chet HaEgel, and then afterwards there's a repetition on Vayakhel Pekudei of the mitzvah to establish or to build a mishkan. And the simple, mamash, very straightforward reason is that in Parshat Truma and Tetzaveh is the commandment that Hashem gives to Moshe to build the Mishkan, and afterwards he gives in Tetzaveh, there's the details about the Big Day Kuna, and then afterwards in Parshat Vayakhel and Pekudei, you've got the implementation of the tzivoy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave. That's, the very straightforward, simple explanation to this repetition. But there's a very, very fascinating terminology in the Yerushalmi that the Yerushalmi calls Parshat Truma and Tetzaveh Mishkan Rishon, and it calls Parshat Vayikhel and Pekudei as Mishkan Sheni. Unbelievable. Even though it's the same Mishkan, right? We don't have two Mishkans, but that's how the Yerushalmi refers to it. It refers to Vayakhel Pekudei as a Mishkan Sheni, the second Mishkan. What is the significance of the second Mishkan? Why is it called like that by the Yerushalmi? So again, I think the straightforward explanation of the Yerushalmi is that somehow the Mishkan that was intended at the time before the Chet HaEgel, that's called the first Mishkan. It had a certain level of Kedusha and holiness. And after, again, the sad event of the Chet HaEgel and the Jewish people sinning in such a way, so then they made the Mishkan. Of course, till then there wasn't, but that's already a second level. It's not exactly like the first level. It's a different type of Mishkan, so much so that it's called by the Yerushalmi, it's called the second Mishkan. So I would like to, I don't remember, Pashut, I've forgotten at the moment who exactly says it, but I'd like to point out that there are there are two fundamental differences between the way the Torah describes the donations and to whom the mitzvah was commanded in the, let's call it the first Mishkan, the Mishkan of Truma and Tetzaveh, as opposed to the way the Torah describes the building of the Mishkan, the second Mishkan in Vayakhel Pekudei. So notice, in Truma, Parshat Truma, I'm reading now the opening verses. It says, the second verse, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe lemor, Daber b'nei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, V'yikchiu li Truma, and they should take for me, in other words, for my sake, l'shem shemayim, a Truma, a donation. And who they take, who's it been taken from? Ma'et kol ish asher yidvenu libo. So the pasuk, listen to the words, mikol ish, of every man, asher yidvenu libo, who his heart has stirred him to be to volunteer these donations. Okay, now let's look at Parshat Vayakhel. How does the Torah describe? Look at how it addresses the Jewish people. I'm reading now Perek Lamed Hey and Pasuk Dalet and Hey. Vayomer Moshe al kol adat ben Esau lemor zeh hadavar shetzivah Hashem lemor. Moshe says to the entire community of the Jewish people, assembly of the Jewish people, this is the matter which Hashem has commanded, saying, Kachu me'itchem, take from yourselves, Truma la Hashem. Okay? Take from among you, me'itchem. So notice the difference. In Parshat Truma, the first Mishkan, who was it addressed to? To go now and to bring forth donations to the building. To Kol Ish Asher Yelid Benu Libo, any person whose heart stirs him. Any person. And here it says, Ku, in Vayakhel it says, Ku meitchem, take from you, from amongst you. So there's one of the latter Mefarshim say the difference is like this. Before the Chet HaEgel, who's Kol Ish? Kol Ish is everybody, any man. It includes even the Eruv Rab. It includes also the people who accompanied Am Yisrael, people who were like newly converted, basically Egyptians, who had now decided that they want to cast their lot with the Jewish people. And then they emerged with Am Yisrael out of Egypt, like the Torah tells us that when Am Yisrael went out of Egypt, they were accompanied by Erev Rab, a whole multitude of people who ostensibly, to begin with, they weren't Jews. They just now used this opportunity to somehow take advantage of Am Yisrael coming out, and of course, some of them, no doubt, identified deeply with the morality of the Jewish people, with their history and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But they were, when it says, to get back to the point, when it says Kol Ish, it means every man, including the Erev Rab. But as we know from all the Midrashim, the main instigators of the Chet HaEgel were the Erev Rab, Dafka them. They who were so connected still to pagan cults, they were the ones who then fomented the sin of Am Yisrael making an Egel. Now, once that happened, in the Mishkan Sheni, can you see the difference? Yeah, it says that Moshe says to Hashem, now, I don't want those people to donate. Chu me'itchem. I want it to come from you, amongst you, not from Kol Ish. That's the first thing. The second difference between the first Mishkan and the second Mishkan is as follows, that the way the mitzvah of Shabbat is introduced. In the first Mishkan, we've got the following order of the Psukim on the Parshiot. We've got Vayakhel, we've got Truma, then we've got Tetzaveh, then we've got afterwards Kitisa, and up to the Chet HaEgel, we've got the commandment of Shabbat. And there, the Torah says we have to keep the Shabbat because Hashem created the world in 6 days, and he blessed the seventh day. Therefore, you have to keep Shabbat. When there is the second Mishkan, you have, first of all, not a commandment of the Mishkan first. You've got a commandment of Shabbat first, and then only afterwards the commandment of the Mishkan. And post Chet HaEgel, what is the reason for the Shabbat being given? We know that in Parshat Va'et, when it speaks about the second Lukot, which were brought down to by Moshe, those second tablets, they have a different reason for keeping Shabbat. Not the Shabbat that to commemorate that Hashem made the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested and he blessed it, but because we must remember that we worked in Mitzrayim, and therefore we have to also rest. It's like more a social type of reason for keeping the Shabbat. So you see the absolute difference. The first Mishkan was on a high level. It was intended to be so. It included a lot of people from different strata of Am Yisrael. Kol Ish even the Arab Rab, it was much more inclusive. But once we saw that there was this collapse, we had to now narrow and focus, first of all, on the Jewish people. And originally, the first Mishkan, the whole reason for Shabbat was because Hashem created the world in 6 days, and the seventh he rested, and that was changed after the Mishkan. So the whole point is not only to explain the Psukim and what happened, but we could see that part of the tshuva was to go slowly. You can't, we once had an ideal, and that ideal didn't work out. And now we had to settle for, in a way, second best in the second Mishkan, as the second attempt, as the Yerushalmi calls. But we always have to have in mind, and that's what the Torah writes at 4 times, that we want to get to a situation where we'll rebuild a first Mishkan. The third temple will be like the first Mishkan. And what we'll do is we'll then, when we do mitzvot and we'll do Shabbat, we will do things because with a higher level of trying to imitate Hashem, because Hashem made the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. So Shabbat Shalom Lekulam, and Bezat Hashem, also that all these blessings of Dr. Yitzchak at the hostages should be returned. Bezat Hashem soon.